Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be breaking down some Dynasty teams. I want to say we haven't done this in what, 3, 4, 5 days? In reality, I'm doing this every single day. Just the majority of them are personalized podcasts that we're able to send directly to people. But figured we didn't have a Dynasty video today, so let's upload this on YouTube. And of course, thank you for everything. If you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And everybody here is a member of the flock. Everybody used promo code FLOCK on flockfantasy.com. So if I'm going over your team in this, thank you so much for being a member of the flock, and really looking forward to talking to your team about your team, and really looking forward to talking to you for years to come. But anyway, let's go ahead and let's dive into this first one here. 6 String Theory says, hey, in a 12-team PPR, 1 quarterback start, 8 team built through many decent trades over the first 2 years of the league, was runner-up in 2021, co-champ in 2022. What the hell does that mean? Looking forward to your breakdown. Feel free to put on YouTube updated roster after a couple trades. Sent Pollard, Jameson Williams, and the 108 for Justin Jefferson, and sent Donovan Peoples-Jones and Hayden Hurst for David Njoku. New roster attached. Okay, so let's go through and let's scroll down and actually find the new team here that we're able to pull up. So this is from 6 String Theory. First off, I will say in terms of the David Njoku trade, essentially going Donovan Peoples-Jones, Hayden Hurst for David Njoku. I mean, I really do like that. Can't find this new team, but I mean, if we were going to be talking about Donovan Peoples-Jones in particular, I mean, this was a player that was very impressive, to say the least. I mean, this past season, especially from a best ball perspective, I think we can say that you kind of had everything that you wanted to from Donovan Peoples-Jones. But now that you're getting Elijah Moore coming over, yeah, my hopes with DPJ definitely a lot lower than where they were. David Njoku, a phenomenal player. I mean, I was embarrassingly high on David Njoku in the 2017 NFL draft. I mean, an elite level athlete, super young in that 2017 NFL draft. I mean, top to bottom, love the man. I think he's still going to be very good. I think he's in a phenomenal situation. Love that trade. And then in terms of trading Tony Pollard, Jameson Williams, and the 108 for Justin Jefferson, it is laughable. You should be put in prison for that. I have no idea how the hell you got that deal done. But let's go position by position with this team here. Starting off at the quarterback spot, where we do have Lamar Jackson. I mean, if we're going to be looking at Lamar Jackson, and that's about it. I mean, I guess we have Justin Fields. These are the perfect examples in my mind of quarterbacks we want in a 1 quarterback league. If you're playing in a 1 quarterback format, let's go for the highest ceiling possible. I don't give a damn about the floor. If my quarterback gets injured, I'll easily be able to find a replacement. Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, given the rushing upside that they have, they probably have the highest ceilings. I don't know, very, very high ceilings from a fantasy football perspective. You could easily see these guys being quarterback 1 and quarterback 2 overall. Now, at the same time, I don't necessarily think they have the same long-term stability that you're going to get from Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence. Like, I would almost bet anything. I'd bet every penny that I've ever come across that Trevor Lawrence will be a starting quarterback in the NFL 5 years from now. Can I say the same thing about Justin Fields? Nope. Lamar Jackson, probably, but he may be injured at the same time. So, I mean, I think that these are quarterbacks that inherently have a little bit of a lower floor, but such a high ceiling that in a 1 QB league, love having that combination. Now, going over to running back, we're going to be looking at James Conner, Ramondre Stevenson in this starting lineup. I mean, down there on the bench, we have A.J. Dillon, Antonio Gibson. So we have some depth. Running back's definitely not the strength of this team, but we have Bijan Robinson with the 101. So in reality, if you're going to be looking at this, if you have Bijan Robinson 1, Ramondre 2, that's one hell of an RB1, RB2 combo. James Conner as the short-term answer for that running back depth. Conner pretty much guaranteed to be the 3-down player in Arizona this next season. And then A.J. Dillon for some additional depth as well. I mean, I really like this running back room. Obviously, you really just want Ramondre Stevenson in that full PPR league, but this is that full PPR league, and at times he was used like prime Alvin Kamara last year. Now, by far and away, the strength of the team is going to be wide receiver. I mean, it is obnoxious. It's a 12-team league. looking at this, it looks like it's a 4-team league. I think you lied to me about how many teams are in this. We have Justin Jefferson, the wide receiver 1 overall in Dynasty. We have CeeDee Lamb, a top 3 wide receiver in Dynasty. We have Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, both borderline top 5 wide receivers for this next season. Going down to the bench, this is where it gets unbelievably obnoxious. We have Chris Olave, we have Drake London, we have Calvin Ridley, we have DeAndre Hopkins. What the hell am I supposed to say here? This is a 4-team league. I know you lied to me about it, but it's all good. I know you said it's a 12-teamer. There's no way this is a 12-team league. But regardless, if we were to play along with it and say, okay, yeah, this is a 12-team league, and we were to try to come up with some deals, I think what we would be looking to do is sell DeAndre Hopkins, sell Calvin Ridley, right? Because if we break this down, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley are phenomenal players. But their dynasty value next offseason, given their age, will inherently be lower than it currently is. No matter what happens this next season, you're almost guaranteed for both DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley to be worth less in Dynasty in 2024 than they are today. So if we are rostering a player of that profile on our team, they need to be someone that will score points and make a real difference in our lineup this season. In my mind, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley can do that for a ton of teams, but probably not ours. Are we starting them over Devontae Adams? Nope. Are we starting them over Tyreek Hill? Nope. We're not starting him over Lamb. We're not starting him over Jefferson. And then even if we have an injury to one of those guys, you're looking at Chris Olave. You're not starting him over Chris Olave. If we're looking at Drake London, sure, maybe. But in reality, the difference between those two players aren't going to be much. So if we have that depth of Chris Olave, wide receiver 5, Drake London, wide receiver 6, Hopkins, Ridley, they do nothing for us. I would be willing to sell them for future first in this league with this team in particular. I would be willing to go through and package them somewhere else with this roster, like maybe go through and package together Dallas Goedert and DeAndre Hopkins and go get Kyle Pitts. If you think he is the tight end 1 in Dynasty, maybe you go and package, DeAndre Hopkins, Ramondre Stevenson, and go try to get a running back like, I don't know, maybe Kenneth Walker. I think that could be a play that we make as well. There's so many possibilities of what we could do with those veteran wide receivers, but in my mind, if we are rostering those veterans, it needs to be in the context of we want those players in our starting lineup soon, and you're never going to be doing that here. Now, going over to the, I believe, tight end positions, the last thing we have to talk about, we have Dallas Goedert, borderline top 5 tight end. We have David Njoku. We have the second-year tight end in Tennessee. So we're phenomenal at tight end as well. This is a team that has clearly no holes. We're elite at quarterback. It's the best wide receiver core I've literally ever seen. Top 5 tight end, pretty damn good running backs, bringing in Bijan Robinson. So, if we were doing anything here, these 5th-round picks are just complete trash. They're meaningless. I would say you just draft Bijan in 101, try to sell Hopkins, try to sell Calvin Ridley, but in reality, I have no idea why I'm trying to tell you what to do with your dynasty team when this dynasty team is better than anything I've ever been able to come up with in my entire life. But yeah, that's all I got here. Thank you so much again, my friend, for being a member of the flock and supporting the channel. Really hope that this was able to help you out in some way. Really hope that you were able to get something from it. And as always, if you have any ideas on what I can be doing for you that I am not right now, especially when it comes to flockfantasy.com, if you're ever on there and you're seeing, yeah, we're updating it every single day. We have new features on flockfantasy.com. But if there's anything that you haven't seen put on there yet, if there's an update you haven't seen yet, please reach out to me and let me know, because we are going to be updating that bad boy until the end of time. I am very excited about it. But let's go over to our next team here. This one coming out from Robbie G says, hey, Mason, thanks in advance for the advice. 12-team PPR Superflex plus tight end premium and 4 points per passing touchdown. We have the 106 and traded Juju Smith-Schuster for a 2023 first, which is now the 107, and Cordell Patterson at the beginning of the year. I have all my own future draft picks as well. Thanks again, man. Keep up the great work. No, thank you so much. And I'd say, if we're looking at trading Juju for the 107, of course, we'd rather have the 107. You're going to be looking at possibly Jahmyr Gibbs, Will Levis, Jackson Smith, and Jigbo with that selection. Yeah, I would way rather have all of them over Juju Smith-Schuster, but really not too much we have to discuss. I think most people are playing in 12-team Superflex tight end premium leagues where you're only getting 4 points per passing touchdown. So let's go ahead and let's pull this up. So starting off at the quarterback position, we are going to be rolling with Jalen Hurts and Deshaun Watson. Okay, so if we have Jalen Hurts and Deshaun Watson, we are in a phenomenal situation. I mean, there's not too much that we can even be discussing here. I'd say Deshaun Watson's still going to be a top 10 quarterback, locked and loaded in Dynasty, as the contract that guarantees him a starting job for a very long time, and he has a ceiling that's higher than almost any other quarterback you're going to find in fantasy. Jalen Hurts, we don't need to talk about it. We know Jalen Hurts is great. Going down here, I mean, we have Mac Jones as a quarterback 3 that you are confident he'll have a starting job this next season. Of course, because there's not a lot of passing volume in New England, and at the same time, he has literally 0 rushing upside. You're never excited to go through and start Mac Jones, but you can start Mac Jones if you need to. So having him as a quarterback 3 just for the bye weeks, not a bad thing at all. Now, going down to the taxi squad, looks like we're not really going to have anybody. We have Matt Corral, but in my mind, Matt Corral is nothing. But going back to what we were talking about with that 107, of course, this is dependent on Will Levis indeed being a pick inside the top 10 of the NFL draft. If Levis goes top 10 of the NFL draft, I think Will Levis is 100% in play here for this team at 7, because looking at the rest of this roster, I mean, we have some cornerstone assets to build around, but I'm not going to fault us at all if we want to go through and grab that QB3. Now, going over to running back, we're going to be rolling with Christian McCaffrey in the starting lineup. And then down there on the bench, we have, I mean, not too much. We're rolling with Damian Harris primarily as RB2. Maybe make the arguments Kenneth Gainwell. But in reality, I mean, we don't have, oh, thank God. Okay, we have Breece Hall. Okay, we're good. We have Breece Hall, and at the same time, we have Christian McCaffrey. So if that's the case, and then we're looking at our running back depth being guys like Damian Harris, Kenneth Gainwell, I'm fine with that. I just really didn't want to have to project one of those guys to be our running back 2. I'm fine with them RB3, RB4. So having Breece Hall in this team is going to make the running back room solidified top to bottom. Going over to wide receiver, we have Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson. So we have 2 top 5 wide receivers in Dynasty. Then going down there to the bench, I mean, we are currently sitting with Calvin Ridley as our wide receiver 3. I mean, I personally really like Calvin Ridley, but we have to understand he was drafted in 2018, but stayed like 5-6 years in high school for whatever reason. So the man's actually a lot older than you'd assume. I believe he's 29 or about to turn 29. So if we're looking at Calvin Ridley, not necessarily the same type of guy as Garrett Wilson, Jamar Chase, where you're building for the long term with those 2 players. And obviously they're going to give you short-term production as well. Calvin Ridley, Christian McCaffrey, they're going in the bucket of, they're just assets that we want on our team if we are looking to contend in 2023. If we're looking for the long-term play, we probably should be selling them, because given their age and given the career arcs for their individual positions, it's almost guaranteed, regardless of what happens this next year, that they will be worth less next offseason. But I think this is a team that's ready to compete. Going over to Mark Andrews at tight end. I know we've talked about this a lot, but I just want to reiterate, I do believe that we have the Baltimore Ravens as a worse offense overall with no Lamar Jackson. But also, given the nature of Lamar Jackson's playing style, he monopolizes a lot of the points in Baltimore with his rushing touchdowns, with his overall rushing yards. So if we are looking at the overall offensive pie that is available in Baltimore, I think that pie is going to shrink. But because whichever quarterback's going to come in to replace Lamar Jackson, they are most likely not going to be taking up a percentage of that pie. They're most likely not going to be going out there and averaging 50, 60 rushing yards a game, averaging over half a rushing touchdown per game. I would say that it's going to allow each of the skill positional players, whoever the wide receiver 1 is there, I mean Mark Andrews as well, to have a larger slice of a smaller pie. So I think Lamar Jackson moving out of Baltimore, from a fantasy football standpoint, from a raw points per game perspective, should not have too much of an impact on Mark Andrews, at least in my opinion. I know most people are saying that you are going to get Mark Andrews with the downgrade with no Lamar Jackson. But going down to the bench, we have Cole Kmet, we have Hayden Hurst, so we have some solid tight end depth. I mean, in general, this is a team that has the elite level assets. We don't have a ton of depth behind them. I mean, this is a start 10 league. I would love this team. Listen up. I know this doesn't go directly for what we're talking about here, but if you were playing in a league where you're only starting 8 guys, You're only starting 9 guys. I mean, I've made a ton of podcasts for those people that are in those start 8 leagues. And we go through and we say, okay, well, we just want to go studs and duds, studs and duds, studs and duds. This is exactly what I'm talking about. In my mind, this is the exact thing that we are looking for, to go through and to just get those true elite level options at each and every position and not worry too much about the depth. Now, because this is a start 10 team league, we are going to have to worry a little bit more about depth. But if we are sitting there with the 107 with the ability to bring in Will Levis, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jahmyr Gibbs, at that point, I think that we honestly can solve that problem at a couple different positions. It just depends on which direction, obviously, our league ends up making us go with, because we're not going to get to choose out of those 3 guys. I mean, in general, if we're looking at any other moves we could potentially make, I don't really see any sell high guys on this roster. I don't really see anything wrong with the allocation of the positions down there on the bench. I would say in general that this is one of the very few teams, based on the strength of it and based on the fact that I do think we're probably 1 to 2 pieces away, or maybe just 1 piece away, having a little bit more depth. I would not mind. Of course, you are not doing this right now. We don't need to worry about making our roster pretty right now. But I would not mind going through and during the season, if we have an injury, selling our 2024 first, bringing in another piece. That way we can win this year, because I think this team's good enough to win this year in a 12-team league, just given the lack of depth. Obviously, it's going to be difficult to get by with a serious injury, but given how good this roster is during the season, if we are that true contender, I'd be fine going through and selling our 2024 first to plug a hole. But right now, we're completely fine. It's April. We're not having to do that. But again, thank you so much, my friend, for being a member of the flock and supporting the channel. I really hope you're able to get something from this. I kind of feel crappy. This was another very strong team, just like the one before, where it's hard to come up with anything to really do. I think it's a super strong roster, my friend. But let's go ahead and let's pull up our next one real quick. We have a donation coming out from Gucci Broomstick. Thank you. Says, hey, without going into detail of each trade, I lost the 108, 102, and a 2025 first for Josh Jacobs, Jalen Waddle, Dalton Schultz, and Rondale Moore. Okay, so Jalen Waddle versus the 102, that's going to be like Jalen Waddle versus, say, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young. In my mind, they're comparable assets. I probably give the slight edge to Jalen Waddle unless you really need that quarterback. If we're going to be looking at the 108, you're going to be looking at Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, assuming this is going to be a super flex league, versus Josh Jacobs. I think that those are very equivalent pieces regardless. I mean, dependent on if you're going to be rebuilding or contending. Looking at the 2025 first versus Dalton Schultz, Rondale Moore. In my mind, it's the future first, not even that close. So honestly, I think it's going to be dependent on if it's super flex. I think we probably want the picks. If it's a 1 quarterback league, we probably want the players. But obviously, that just goes into that 108 being drastically different depending on the 2 different formats. Okay, but now let's go over to our next team. It's going to come out from Evening, from D. Whitmore. Says, evening, looking for some guidance on this roster in a money league. Came close last year, but now we're in a sticky situation with a 0 2023 draft capital and some holes in the team. It's a 6-point passing touchdown league with no tight end premium. Thanks in advance. So thank you again for being a member of the flock, my friend. I really do appreciate it. And I will say, why are we looking at a light mode here? It looks like this should have been... Okay, what's going on? Okay, perfect. Now we can pull this up. And okay, so good. We have Patrick Mahomes here. Can never cry about having Patrick Mahomes. I think that we should be happy at quarterback, almost regardless of what we're hearing to see at quarterback too, whenever you pull up Mahomes. Going down to that second quarterback spot, we're going to be rolling with Matthew Stafford, Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, obviously, those are 2 quarterbacks that give you relatively high ceilings. But at the same time, the floor is going to be very low from a fantasy football standpoint. Neither of these guys are going to run the ball. Not only are they not going to run the ball, but the passing volume does seem to probably be limited in both areas. I don't necessarily expect Jimmy Garoppolo to go to Las Vegas and then be a significantly better version of, anything we've seen in years past. We haven't seen anything in years past that we like. I'm trying to think. I don't even think it's going to be able to repeat what Derek Carr did in 2021. Yeah, so, I mean, if we were looking at it, it's an okay quarterback room. Of course, we could go out there. Of course, we would love to see an elite level quarterback too. But in reality, I mean, some things just can't too. Now, going over to running back, you're looking at Joe Mixon, Jeff Wilson. Down there in the bench, I mean, we have Kareem Hunt, Alexander Madison. So really not much at RB at all. If you go and hop in some underdog drafts right now, you'll see Joe Mixon's going as a running back 3. Like, people are completely off of Joe Mixon. And we have no 2023 first as well. So if people from a redraft perspective are taking Joe Mixon as like a low-end RB2, we have nothing behind him. Running back, we are complete toast. Going over to wide receiver, we're sitting with Tyreek Hill, Chris Godwin, Christian Kirk, Michael Thomas. Going down to the bench, we really have nothing. Oh, dear God. This is such an interesting team. We are elite at tight end with Andrews Hawkinson. We even have David Njoku down there. It's an interesting team in that I think as it stands right now, we have no shot to compete this next season, right? But on the flip side of that, not only do we have no shot to compete this next season on how this roster is currently situated, the vast majority of this roster is made up of old veteran players. Like, we're not expecting Joe Mixon to get better in 2024, right? We're not expecting Tyreek Hill to get better in 2024. Godwin's not getting better in 2024. Neither is Kirk. Neither is Andrews. Maybe Hawkinson. Probably not. Not Thomas. Not Stafford. Not Garoppolo. So all these players are either stepping into their prime where they are going to most likely plateau in production over the coming seasons, or possibly in the case of someone like Joe Mixon, go down. So if we were looking at potentially making some moves here, I think we have to kind of pick a lane. We're built around some veterans, but at the same time, we don't have enough firepower to get it done this season. If you're telling us this is not a tight end premium format, I really don't have any excitement to go through and throw TJ Hawkinson into a flex spot. While I love Hawkinson, the player, while I'd love to build the dynasty team around TJ Hawkinson, usually we never talk about going after team need in Dynasty. And if this is something we were to look to do, we would not need to do this until August, September, when we're actually submitting a starting lineup. But this can be something we're thinking about over the next few months. If we see someone go through and throw a Travis Etienne out there on the trade block, we can be looking at selling Hawkinson for a running back. Now, the reason I'm saying Hawkinson, not Andrews, is because I think Mark Andrews is going to be neutral with the loss of Lamar Jackson, as we've already discussed. But at the same time, I think that the vast majority of people in your Dynasty League are most likely going to be wanting to avoid Mark Andrews with no Lamar Jackson. So that be the case, I think you're going to get more value for TJ Hawkinson, even if he's in a phenomenal situation, even if he's a player that I love. If we could go through and sell Hawkinson for someone like Travis Etienne, if the moment opens up, I would love it. Let me go ahead and let me pull up my rankings on flockfantasy.com just so I can show you exactly where we have them. I know you're a member of the flock, my friend. I know you can pull up our rankings at any time, but I just want to oh, this was really cool. I want to show you all this. I know this is kind of a dumb thing, but I like it. I like it. Look at our new loading gift. This is courtesy of Zachary Link. Y'all know him. Y'all love him. But anyway, let's go ahead and let's throw up my rankings. We'll sort by mine, yada, yada, yada. We should have Hawkinson inside the top 50, correct? Hopefully we have Hawkinson inside the top 50. Yeah, we have TJ Hawkinson at 42. Running backs that we have in his range, guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey are ahead of him. Players like Josh Jacobs, Najee Harris are directly after him. So I think this is a team that honestly may benefit from going through and making a move like selling TJ Hawkinson for Najee Harris. That could be a possibility if we really wanted to. I mean, if we were looking at, I'm trying to think, any other potential moves, it's going to be so hard to get ETN. If we were to package something with Hawkinson to maybe try to get one of those running backs that are above him, I mean, if we're scrolling through here, it's very difficult to find anybody that makes sense in a package that would be appealing for another owner that we don't need ourselves. Like, the last thing we can do is on a team that doesn't have a whole lot of depth, where we're having to start Michael Thomas currently, is start making 2-for-1 deals just to get an upgrade in the starting lineup. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to have to do. I think we wait until we are at the beginning of the season, and when we get confirmation that we believe we can be a contender this next year, then at that point, we look to go ahead and we look to sell Hawkinson, bring in someone like Najee Harris. That way, we're not having to go through and just throw crap at the wall for a running back 2 spot. But the reason I'm saying wait until the beginning of the season is the last thing I want you to do is go through and trade a long-term piece such as T.J. Hawkinson to fill a team need in a Dynasty league, where obviously in Dynasty, we're not trying to build around team need. I would rather do that when we know we are contending. So if we are going to be in a spot where maybe before the season starts in training camp, we always know that there are a couple key injuries. Maybe Tyreek Hill goes down with a torn ACL. Of course, we're not wishing it on the man, but the second that happens, or maybe Patrick Mahomes has a high ankle sprain, we know, okay, this team probably is not contending regardless of if we trade T.J. Hawkinson. So at that point, we don't make that deal. And instead, we probably pivot off and we probably start to see what we could get for pieces like Joe Mixon, Chris Godwin, Christian Kirk, etc. to play for 2024. But we're definitely going to have to make some moves by the time we get to the start of the season. But let's wait until we get to the start of the season so we have a little more clarity on if we're going to go down that rebuilding path or that contending path. But again, thank you so much, my friend, for being a member of the flock and supporting the channel. Really hope you got something from this. And as always, please, if there's anything I can do, I mean, very similar to just going back to what we were talking about earlier on Flock Fantasy. I mean, looking at a couple things we're adding, like the little logo. I like that little loading GIF. And then also this age bar, so we can go through and we can say, okay, we only want to look at running backs between the ages of up to 22 years old, you know, and can go ahead and sort it that way. I mean, I really like this aspect of it, but let me know if there's any other tool that I can add in for you, my friend. But real quick, we have a donation coming out from Dynasty Drunk. Says, what's your take on Lance going into the season? Is this a buy low opportunity? Just got an offer of Lance and CD Lamb for Lamar Jackson in a 12-team Superflex Start 9 league. Okay, so first off, thank you so much for being a member of the flock, my friend. Second off, I will admit, you're probably asking the wrong guy here. I mean, I was so wrong on Trey Lance. I went heavy into Lance in that 2021 draft class. I was saying to take him over Kyle Pitts. I was saying to take him over Justin Fields. I was adamant that he was the 102 in that class, only behind Trevor Lawrence. And yeah, clearly that hasn't working out. I mean, we doubled down on it last offseason. So I am not the best person to ask for Trey Lance questions, but I will show you, I've been getting in a lot of underdog drafts as of late. And after we had the news of Brock Purdy / Sam Darnold, after we had the news of them splitting the job, I started drafting Trey Lance in almost every league. Now, we've been buying the dip on a few players. We've been buying the dip on Will Levis. But my 5 most drafted players on underdog right now at the quarterback position include Will Levis, Trey Lance, Anthony Richardson. I think it kind of depends on the situation you're in. I think Lance has an incredibly low floor. Like, I think it is 100% possible Brock Purdy's the starting quarterback this next season. But I still stand by the fact that I think Trey Lance has the ability to be a top 3 quarterback in the NFL in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns, which is going to score a crap ton of fantasy points. And on top of this, he's playing for the San Francisco 49ers with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Shanahan, a great offensive line. So I think he has an incredibly high ceiling. I would rather have Trey Lance and CeeDee Lamb over Lamar Jackson. But I also have like CeeDee Lamb and Lamar Jackson back-to-back. I love Lamar from a redraft perspective, but from a dynasty perspective, I don't see Lamar Jackson being an elite-level quarterback in 3 years. I know that's a very hot take, but it is what it is. Now, RJ Davidson coming out with our next team. Thank you so much, my friend, for being a member of the flock. Gonna be happy to go through and check this out. It's a 12-team Superflex PPR 4-point passing touchdown league. We've been extremely active and made more trades than I can list. Most recently, we traded Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. Oh, for Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Thank God. I was going to say, what the hell did we trade them for? We gave up the 101, 104, 107, Kyler, and Daniel Jones. Okay, let's look at this overall. Keep in mind, it will be a super flex league. So Bijan Robinson versus Jamar Chase, give me Jamar Chase. But if we're going to be looking at, say, Bijan Robinson and the 104, which is like Anthony Richardson versus Jamar Chase, I think that's about an equivalent package. I honestly think you can make an argument to go Bijan Robinson and Anthony Richardson there. But if we're looking at Joe Burrow versus Kyler, the 107, Daniel Jones, I'm probably going to go Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase for the stack, specifically because I can have a little sneak peek and see how many starting lineup requirements that we have in this league. Because if we were going to go through and play in a league where we're having to start 12 offensive players on a week-to-week basis, then yeah, we probably don't want to be going through and trading all of that capital for 2 elite level studs. But if we're pulling this up right now in this league, we're going to be starting 9 guys. We're starting 9 offensive players. So if we're starting 9, then hell yes, let's go get those studs. Let's build around Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase for the long term. Yeah, I'm excited to look at this team. Okay, going into the quarterback room, we have Joe Burrow, Trey Lance. Just got done talking about Trey Lance. Like we were saying, I think that he falls in the bucket of a couple different rushing quarterbacks that he has an incredibly high ceiling, but I think also he has an incredibly low floor. So we have a wild card at our quarterback 2, but we have someone with an extremely high floor and ceiling combo at QB1. We have Jordan Love is going to be the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers this next season. So we at least have a guaranteed quarterback that we can plug in at that super flex spot. I really like where our quarterback room currently stands. Going down to the rookie picks that we have, I mean, we really don't have the ability to take any rookies there unless you're super high on Hendon Hooker, which I'm not advocating to take him at pick 10 or pick 12. Now, going over to RB, we have Breece Hall, Javonte Williams, both coming off of torn ACLs. I mean, Javonte Williams a little bit more. Cam Akers down there, I mean, 2 years removed from the torn Achilles now. We've had not too much luck in the injury department for this running back room. I mean, outside of that, we don't have too much depth. I mean, the 110, we can be looking at Zach Charbonnet if that's something that we want. I will say with Javonte Williams, I see an incredibly high ceiling. Obviously, this is a player that's flashed elite traits at times, but at the same time, it's a player that's never really demonstrated the ability to dominate with a 3-down workload over a large stretch of games. I think we've seen maybe 2 to 3 games of Javonte Williams' collegiate and NFL career where he's been a true 3-down back. He had a split with Michael Carter Jr. in college. At the NFL level, every coaching staff he's had has decided to implement him into a committee, no matter how bad Melvin Gordon was. I mean, remember, Melvin Gordon eventually got cut, but at the beginning of the season, he was splitting with Javonte. So I'm all in on Breece Hall. It's more difficult to be all in on Javonte Williams. I think we for sure have a running back too between Javonte and Akers, though. Now, going over to wide receiver, we have Chase, Ridley, Gabe Davis. Down there on the bench, we are rolling with Michael Thomas, Jacoby Myers, Wan'Dale Robinson. So some upside wide receivers down there on the bench. In reality, it's not like we can be too excited about what we have there. But going back to what we were discussing, with this being a start 9 league and why that is important, is you all saw the start 10 league that we were looking at previous to this, where you were having that additional flex spot here, where if we were putting an additional flex spot and then we were having to go through and stretch our wide receiver room this thin, at that point, I'd be a little bit worried, but in reality, if we only have one flex, that wide receiver depth is not going to matter nearly as much as it would in one of those leagues that we were looking at previous to this. So I really like where we stand there. David Njoku, I mean, this is a tight end we've been talking about, an elite level athlete, phenomenal offense. I think that David Njoku will be stepping into his prime this next season. Down there on the bench, we have Dawson Knox just as a small little depth piece, not too much to discuss. What we are going to be looking at will be here with these rookie picks. So 110, I like this pick. I like trying to get as many selections as we can inside the top 10 of the NFL draft. Because if we're looking at the top 10 prospects at wide receiver, we're going to have JSN, Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison. At quarterback, we are going to have Young, Stroud, Richardson, Levis, and I'm not ranking these in order. And then at running back, we are going to be looking at Bijan, Gibbs, and Zach Charbonnet. So we are going to get one of those top 10 players at pick 10. I don't know who it's going to be. I think it's probably Zach Charbonnet, dependent on what the NFL draft looks like. Maybe, of course, we have a wild card getting thrown inside the top 10, and we're able to actually pick between two of those players at pick 10. But regardless, I am confident in saying that we will get a difference-making player at that selection. Pick 12 is different. Pick 12, you're kind of in the range where you're sending up a hope and a prayer you're getting Zay Flowers. It's not even a guarantee. Pick 12 instead, you may be looking at Roschon Johnson. You may be looking at Sean Tucker. You may be looking at a Josh Downs, Jalen Hyatt. Who the hell knows what's going to be at 12? It is a massive tier drop to a bunch of players that all have strengths, weaknesses on their profiles that we're kind of waiting for the NFL draft capital to show us really how they score at the end of the day. So I personally would do everything I can to try to convert these picks, specifically these second rounders, into selections inside the top 10. If we can move pick 12 and the 204 and go get the 108 and go get the 109, go get the 107, go move inside that range, I would feel so much more comfortable about that. Because in my mind, if you're breaking down some of these rookies, I think from the beginning of the second round to the end there, it's not that much of a difference. Like the fall off between pick 10 and 12 for me is much larger than the fall off between pick 12 and 22 for me. I think that's how big of a teardrop it is. So when we are trying to move up from pick 12 inside the top 10, I'm not going to be stingy. I'm going to not waste our time offering the 302, then going up to the 212, then going up to the 211, then going up to the 206, then the 204. I think we hit them with this decent enough offer. We go, hey man, I'll give you the 112 and the 211 for it. See what he says. When he says no, okay, I'll give you the 112, 204 and see if that gets the job done. Because in reality, I think there are a lot of owners that would say, okay, I'm only moving back 3 spots. I'm getting the 204. I'm going to get a player that I like there. Where I don't think they are. In reality, I think that you're just much better off trying to get inside the top 10. And then later on in the second round here, just taking shots on your guys. I think the hit rates that we should expect from the late second round picks in this year's rookie draft compared to the 204, 206, not that different. Please let me know in the live chat if you think I'm wrong here, but that's personally how I'm operating with my own dynasty teams. In terms of any other overarching thoughts that we have with this roster, it's just going to be a little difficult at the very beginning of the season. Javonte Williams most likely won't be ready. We really need to hope and pray that Breece Hall is ready. And if he is, then I think this can be a team that gets by the beginning of the year and then finishes very strong if we have both those running backs healthy and good to go, and we hit on 1 to 2 rookies if we can get inside those top 10 picks. But yeah, again, thank you so much for being a part of the flock, my friend. I really hope that this podcast was able to help you out, or this breakdown. And as always, if there is anything that I can do for you, please do not hesitate. Reach out to me. Let me know. I'd be super happy to get it done, especially if there's anything on the site that I can do for you. But let's head over to someone that has been a part of the flock for a long time now. Let's go over and check out Dan Larson here. Thank you so much, my man, for the continued support over the years. Says, Dynasty League that I started up 2 years ago, 10-team Superflex, 2-point per tight end reception, and 4-point passing touchdown. So 2-point tight end reception. At that point, I'm willing to say, okay, there is a difference. At that point, I'm willing to say, okay, yeah, we can reasonably go through and jam tight ends into those flex spots and be happy with it. So I'm fine if we build around tight end here a bit. But anyway, we have the 101, 105, 108, 109. Obviously, taking Bijan at the 101 to pair with Breece Hall, Javonte Williams, and Travis Etienne. Okay, so we have not had running back injury luck on our side over the past few years with Breece, Javonte missing this past season, Etienne missing the entire rookie year. Would love to somehow trade up for the 102 to the 103 to get Jackson Smith and Jigba to pair with Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, and Treylon Burks. Recently, we traded Kittle, Elijah Moore, the 106, 307 for Pitts, Claypool, the 405. So the 307, Claypool, 405, all trash, doesn't matter. We traded Kittle, Elijah Moore, and the 106 for Kyle Pitts. And in a 2-point per reception tight end league, I'm fine with this. It sounds like an overpay for Kyle Pitts, but we have to remember the true difference that you are getting with that true elite level tight end for the long term here in a league where you can reasonably put tight ends in that flex spot. Saying, looking forward to a breakdown and any advice on moves we should look to make. Should we look to acquire 2024 first with the 105, 108, 109, or just take best player available, or look to trade for individual assets? Okay, so let's go ahead and let's pull this up. Keep in mind, this is going to be a 10-team league here. And at quarterback, we have a couple elite level players. I mean, we're rolling in with Deshaun Watson. Not only do we have Deshaun Watson, but at the same time, we have Trevor Lawrence. So we should be very happy with where we currently are at the quarterback position. Now, keep in mind, this is a 10-team league, so finding that quarterback 3 is going to be a lot easier. Right now, maybe it's Desmond Ridder. I mean, I'm kind of hoping Desmond Ridder isn't the starter there this next season. And I know you were saying that you really wanted to move up to get Jackson Smith-Njigba at the 102. In my mind, with this being a super flex league, I would almost prefer staying at the 105 because I think this team could benefit from having a quarterback like Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson fall to it at pick 5. And if they don't, and instead we end up getting Jackson Smith-Njigba, hell, we got the guy we wanted anyway. I think this team would benefit from either JSN or Stroud, Richardson or Young. So 105, I think we kind of sit on our hands. I think we're in a very good spot there, if I'm going to be honest, considering the fact this team doesn't have a phenomenal QB3. Now, going over to running back, I mean, we're loaded. We have Javonte, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, Bijan Robinson coming in. So just going back to what we were talking about, not necessarily thinking that we needed to go ahead and do anything we could to trade up for Jackson Smith-Njigba. I mean, you are currently sitting with such a loaded roster here that we may not even have a wide receiver in one of our flex spots. I mean, we're sitting with A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson at wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. Obviously, Claypool's there as of now, but keep in mind, Claypool was even traded off this team. That's not something we need to be looking at whatsoever. But anyway, I think that we are in a spot where Jackson Smith-Njigba would help, but it's not like we have such a big hole at our wide receiver position, and we're having such a hard time fielding flexes, especially when we get Bijan Robinson in here, that we have to do anything we can to trade up for a wide receiver. In reality, I think you're fine, especially, I mean, going back to what we were talking about earlier, Kyle Pitts at tight end, phenomenal in a league where you're getting 2 points per reception. That offense just has to change a bit, and then we're going to be sitting pretty. But going back to what we were discussing, if we're just mapping this out here, so this team could use an extra wide receiver. I mean, at least someone with some upside, right? Of course, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, they're not Jackson Smith-Njigba level good. I'd be the first person to say that. We've been screaming that for a very long time. But at the same time, I mean, if we are going to be looking at this, Bijan Robinson at 105, either JSN or one of those top 3 quarterbacks. And then if we don't get JSN at 5, who are we going to be looking at 8 and 9? That's most likely at least going to be one of Jordan Addison and Quentin Johnston. So you can come away with the running back, the elite running back, the running back 1 overall in Dynasty, come away with the quarterback with a crap ton of upside at your QB3 spot, and you can come away with possibly 2 wide receivers that kind of solve that issue. So my friend, I really like this situation. Now I know you were asking like, okay, should we trade the 108, 109 for an individual player? In reality, I don't think so. I think this team is good enough, young enough, where just continuing to take extremely talented rookies that could see a spike in value going into year 2 is always going to be a good idea. Now, if we were sitting at the 109 and you had an offer where you could trade it for a 2024 first that you thought had the ability to be a top 5 pick, then sure, go ahead and do it. I mean, if you're going to be looking at, just the exponential rise in value you get from getting the 101, the 102, the 103 versus what you would potentially be looking at with the 109, even if it's a year later. With those picks that are the last 2 to 3 in your rookie draft, it's never a bad idea to go ahead and hit the reset button and trade that for a future first a year out if you believe it can be an early first. I think at pick 8 and pick 9, you'll have a good enough prospect where you don't have to do it. It is an option if you want to, but like we said, it's not mandatory. You don't have to go ahead and make that move. But overall, I mean, it's a phenomenal team. There's not too much we can even talk about here. I just personally don't like the idea of trading up for JSN at 2. With this team in particular, I think you've already put yourself in such a damn good spot to be able to just take a ridiculous amount of rookie value as best player available. And at the same time, it will naturally, the way the board is looking to fall, fit what you quote unquote need with this team, even though this team's loaded. But thank you again, my friend, for being a longtime member of the flock. Thank you for all the support over the years. And as always, of course, you know, if there's anything I can ever do for you, especially any way we can improve flockfantasy.com, don't hesitate. Reach out to me immediately. But I think that should honestly be about it for this live stream. Voice starting to get a little raspy. Did a crap ton of yard work today, so I am tired. I'm ready to pass out. But thank you so much, everybody, for coming out, hanging out with us. Really do appreciate you. Really hope that you've had a great weekend so far. Hopefully you're doing something fun tonight. And as always, if there's anything I can do, let me know. Thank you for everything, and I hope you have a great day.